What's up, everybody? Welcome back. John Levesque here, your host as always. Today I am joined by another awesome guest, somebody who you have been demanding that I bring back so that we can have our fourth installment together. Bringing back Reza Dorrani. How you doing, sir?
Hello, John. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good. We're actually supposed to get some snow here in the Pacific Northwest, which like a foot of snow, which is crazy for us, completely unheard of. But I'm excited about it. I'm ready to take the Jeep out and go and tear it up. How about you? How's things going over there?
Things are going well. I'm back in my hometown, Houston. I believe the last time we did a video together, I was stuck in quarantine in California. So I'm happy that I'm back to my own house, to my own office.
Good. Finally back home. Glad to hear it, man. All right. Well, we have had an overwhelming demand from people asking you to come back and do the fourth installment of our expression series. The first three have had amazing results and success. I hear that you're getting a ton of comments on your channel about it. I get a ton of comments on my channel about it. And so finally today I was able to get you back, and I am very excited. I think everybody's going to be stoked to see the next installment of this. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to you. Do me a favor, just introduce yourself to everybody in case they haven't met you before, and then go ahead and take it away, my friend. The floor is yours.
Thank you, John. Hello, everyone. If you haven't heard me or met me before, my name is Reza Dorrani. I am a business applications MVP. I work as a Power Platform practice lead at my organization, Catapult Systems, and I am very big in the community, very big for the community, let's put it this way. And my goal is just to share as much as I can with the community that has given me so much over the course of the last 3 years.
Some reason. Well, man, great to have you. Super stoked to see Expressions Chapter 4.
Let's go.
Let's do it.
And share my screen.
All right. There it is.
All right. So let's begin with Expressions Chapter 4. The first, and I have 3 different scenarios that I have prepared for today's session. And I hope that everyone enjoys all the 3. All 3 are important. So let's begin with the first one. The first scenario is around a flow run. Now, when we build flows in Power Automate, we have a history of each run of our flow. And this history is maintained for a 28-day period, purely from a GDPR perspective. And as part of this history, many a times when our flows run, if we would like to see a very specific case of a flow run. So for example, I have a flow running on a SharePoint list, and I would like to see how did the flow run, or what were the actions in that flow during the run for a very specific item. Now for that, what me as the owner of the flow has to do is has to go to the flow, go to the run history, look at all the runs, look at the date and time, and literally have to guess when was the time and date at which that flow potentially ran, and then go ahead and select that so I can look at my flow run and I can look at all the actions that were executed as part of that flow run. A very common request is around error handling as well. My flow has an error, my flow failed. Now I have to go back to my flow and start clicking around and look at which ones failed and open that flow run. Now, would it not be great if when the flow itself runs, and depending upon your use case, you can send a notification out or maybe store the information directly of the link to that flow run. So if I select a flow run, if we observe the URL on the top that flow generates, now because my tenant is built in the US region, my URL is us.flow.microsoft.com. So you got to be aware of your region so you can see your URL on top. And in this case, I have manage environments. My environment name and ID is right here. Flows, I have the ID of my flow. Runs, I have the ID of the run of the flow. So these are goods. The environment name is a good. The flow ID is a good that never changes. These things never change. What changes is this good that gets generated for each flow run. Now, how do I go about grabbing all of this and storing this in my system of record or sending me a notification email, whatever your use case is? So let's look at how we can do that with the help of expressions. So out here in my flow, it's a very simple, basic flow. I'm just trying to explain the concept of the flow run link. This flow triggers manually. And all I do here is I just send a nice email to myself that expression 401 flow is running now. And here is a link to this flow run. Now, how did I go about creating this link? So right here, if I go ahead and just add a very simple compose action or a variable right here, just to print some information while the flow runs. If I head over to the expression editor right here, and bear in mind, we've seen this in the previous chapters, I have my experimental features turned on. That's why I see this cool new expression editor experience. And right here in this, if I start plugging in a function called workflow, right? And as I was typing workflow, if you notice, it gives me this little information icon right here that says, this function provides you details for the workflow runtime. That means when this flow or this workflow is running, I can grab a lot of details from this function. And if you head over to the list of functions once again, which takes us to the documentation and docs.microsoft.com, and if I was to search for that same function right here called workflow, you can see all the different properties that this workflow exposes. For example, the name of the workflow run, which is nothing but the GUID that we are looking out for. So what I will do right here is I will go ahead and plug in my expression. Now I already have this expression pre-built, so I'll talk through this expression syntax. The first one is concat, and concat allows me to concatenate text. The first text is hard-coded, and this is the URL path right here in my browser URL, which is all the way up onto environments. Remember, you might be in a different region, so make sure you have the URL correct. Next step, I'm using that same workflow function, and in that function, there is an attribute called tags, and in those, I can grab some key data points. One of them is the environment name. And what this gives me is basically this name right here on the top, which is my environment GUID. Next, I append flows, which is right here as per the URL. I get the ID of the flow, which is the name of the flow. And then I append runs and give the name of the flow run, which is nothing but the GUID that gets generated for each and every flow run. And that is my expression. And if I use this expression, and that's exactly what I've used to send myself a notification email, let's go ahead and run this flow. So I'm going ahead and testing this flow manually right now. So this should go ahead.
I didn't even know about that workflow expression, actually. This is a little bit of a lesson for me.
It's pretty neat, actually, because it gives you a lot more information. But right now, the focus is purely just on that part. But many a times we need information about the flow run. So it's gone ahead and sent me an email. So let me go ahead and open my mailbox. And here is the email that I just received. And the email says that, here's a link for you, which takes me directly to the flow run. Now, if I select this, this will redirect me directly to that run, not to the flow, not to the edit experience of the flow, but to that actual run that took place when I ran that flow. And here is an example of that flow run, and check the URL that it generated. Let's open Compose and see that same URL in action right here, right? I got the environment name, I got my flow name, and finally, I got my run GUID.
Man, this takes error handling to the next level, because now forget about waiting for emails, forget about even waiting at all. Like anytime a flow runs instantly now, I know about it. And not only that, right? We could have done that before. But now
Absolutely.
I can go click in directly to that run and deal with that exact instance of the issue.
Exactly. No need to search, no need to find, no need to loop through all your flow runs, and that's not required. And this could also be maintained in my system of record, right? Whenever a flow runs and does something, take an example of an approval workflow. I can store this run information in my data source. And then whenever I would like to see what has happened or what has taken place, I can just click on it. It will directly take me to the flow run. So pretty useful.
Very useful. Very useful. Opens up a lot of possibilities. Nice one, man.
And I'll tell you the follow-up question to this from all our viewers. Reza, we need this expression. So we'll make sure we have this expression in the description of this video. So I'll make sure you have this. So grab this and just use this.
Awesome.
All right.
I was going to say, I know that we were going to get that question. Where can I get this expression? Yeah, good.
All right, moving on. Scenario number 2. I am a very heavy participant, or a very someone who promotes the forums a lot. I believe in the community forums a lot because that's where I started my journey. And whenever I go to the forums, and I look at the flow forums, I look at the questions being asked. Many a times the questions are around, I'm having this issue, that issue. The one common thing that I see is when folks post the images or screenshots of their flows, talking about an issue, the first thing I notice on the top is there are like variables. I see like tons of variables, and then the flow begins, right? Because they are initializing these variables to store certain information through their flows, which makes complete sense. It's not wrong. You're doing the right thing. But when you create so many variables, right? In this case, I have a variable for name, and my variable name says John. The title, that's John's title, the company John works for, years of experience, expertise, which is an array of information. These are all independent variables, and it is fine to use them. It's fine to create them and work through your flows. Now, the key thing to understand is that this concept has come in very recently. Every flow is going to get something known as a performance profile. And I'm showing the actual documentation right here on docs.microsoft.com. So something known as performance profile. And performance profile basically sets the limits basically of your flow. And the profile depends upon the license plan that you own. So for example, if you have the standard Office licenses or the free license, you are in the performance profile low state. There is one that's medium low. Those are the premium plans. Then the dynamics plan. So as you keep going higher in your licensing level, your performance profile of your flow obviously keeps growing. Now, what does the performance profile limit me to? It limits you to the number of actions that a flow can take overall in a 24-hour period. Now, it is not just for the flow, it is for all the flows, all the apps, and any actions you take against the common data service or Dataverse in a 24-hour period. Now, the performance profile goes against whose account? Well, the creator of the flow, the owner of the flow, whatever license that user has would be the performance profile of the flow would be related to that. And at the same time, if you go to the request limits and allocations, this is very important to understand for everyone. Right here is we have limits on how many API calls can we make in a 24-hour period. And this is not just for Flow. This is for Flow, Power Apps, and also CDS. So based on your license, you have a certain set of actions that you can take. Now in Flow, and hear me out clearly, in Flow, every step that you add, right? Every action, even initializing a variable or setting a variable or running a for loop, everything is counted as an API call, everything. So in this example that I'm showcasing right here, the trigger is an API call. This variable is an API call. So that's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and keeps going. Now, if I run a for loop, just imagine a for loop where I'm setting all of these variables, and maybe I'm running a for loop that runs 50 times, and I'm setting these 10 variables example 50 times. That's 500 API calls gone in one flow run.
Yep.
So it's important to be aware of the limits, and it's very important to ensure that you build your flows efficiently.
Yep.
Now that I've kind of set the precedent for this one,
that was good. Let me say one thing. That I'm glad that it was you who went through all of that and not me. So thank you. And number two, I want you guys to know out there, don't fear these API calls. There is some leeway. We on the Power Automate team, we only you only get in trouble if you go over your limit by a very large amount. If you are going over a little bit at a time, or if there's a mistake made, fear not, nothing's going to happen. The team is very flexible on things like that. And so this can sound very scary. It is great information to know, but also know there's a little bit of flexibility in it as well.
Can I add something else? So organizations create service accounts to run flows. Why? Because they want to go around licensing, right? They create one service account and they say, yeah, I'm going to run all my flows with this service account. Well, guess what? You got to think about it now. And of course, John's there and you can go above the limits, but it's important to note these things. We are not scaring you guys, but we are making you aware.
Absolutely.
All right. So here's an example wherein I have so many variables that I have created, but can I avoid creating so many variables in my flow? And the answer is yes. There is a variable of type object. Okay. And in this, the object notation is nothing but JavaScript object notation, which is plain simple JSON. So right here, if you look at my JSON, and this might look a little small, so I have this editor experience open right here. I can zoom in. So I have a very simple JSON that I've built right here, which has the attributes name, title, company, years of experience, and expertise. And for these, I have defined the values as well. So basically key value pairs, and expertise is an array of information. And all of these were actually individual variables that I had created earlier of different types. Like John, variable name is John, the type is string. Well, I replaced it with one single JSON object, which has an attribute name and the value is John. Simple. So instead of creating so many variables, I've just created one simple variable, which is my profile variable, let's say, and that has all those values embedded right there. Great. That's one way of saving API calls, by reducing your variables.
Yep.
Well, Reza, that's easy, but now how do I grab the values from here? What if I want the value and I want to change the value, I want to print the value, I want to send it in an email. You want to do many things with your variables, right? And variables have very simple actions to do that. Now, in case of JSON, there is one action which is called parse JSON. And all you have to do literally for this action, and I'll create this action from scratch, all you have to do here is provide the content, which would be nothing but the variable profile that I have created. So I'm just going to create my variable here. And for the schema, just go to generate from sample and paste the data that you have and click done. And just like that, it goes ahead and creates this structure, which allows me to parse the JSON, basically parse the variable. Now, if I go ahead and let's say I add a compose action, if I want any of those values, the parse JSON action is giving me everything. Here's the name, the title, the company, the years of experience. And these are all values in the JSON, right?
Nice.
So it's there, easy. But this is Reza. We want to save even this action. Why do we call even this action, right? I want to save one more API call. So how can we go about even saving this API call, not even calling parse JSON? Well, for that, what we could use is once again, expressions. So right here, just to go ahead and show you what the expression looks like, I will show a couple of simple cases. The first one is, let's say I would like to showcase the value coming from the name property. And for that, all I have to do literally is this. Okay, variables, because I created a variable, the name of that variable, which is var profile, question mark in brackets, name. Now, what is name? Name is nothing but this property for which I need the value for. If I need title, all I have to do is just replace the name with title. Now, if I go ahead and test this flow, and just to prove my point, once this flow runs, it will grab the title, which is Power Platform Evangelist, from this variable of type object that I just created. So this flow is running right now. Ignore the error at the end. Right here, we have the compose action. And here is the value, which is Power Platform Evangelist. So I don't need parse JSON to parse through my JSON. I can literally go through and just grab the information by just using this very simple expression, which is the name of my variable, and then parsing through the values of that variable. Now, if you want to learn more about JSON parsing, that was the first thing we covered in chapter 3. So this thing is an addition to that, but in the context of variables. Now, let's say I would like to enhance this further. Let's say I would like to update this variable value, right? I would like to change the title. So John, you're a Power Automate evangelist. You're not a Power Platform evangelist. So how do I change the value of my variable, or how do I set my variable? Well, there's something known as set property. Okay, there is a expression function called set property. It requires the object, which is nothing but variables my variable that I created, and then it requires the name of the column that you're trying to update. In my case, it's the title column. And then finally, it is expecting the value. And in my case, the value is going to be Power Automate Guru. How about this, John? Something different.
Hey, I'll take that.
All right. So now all I'm trying to do here is I'm saying I want to set a property in this object, which is nothing but my variable. And what am I trying to change? Which property value am I trying to change? I'm trying to change the title, right? And what am I trying to change it to? To Power Automate Guru. Now, if I go ahead and let's just remove this last action because it looks like there's some error in it. I was just testing prior to this call. Let's go ahead and run this flow. And let's see how the value in that variable gets updated. So the flow runs. And here is the output JSON. I'm just going to copy this and head over straight to my JSON experience, paste it right here. And guess what? John is now a Power Automate Guru. So I changed the value of one of the properties in that single object variable that I created. And I can do the same thing for anything else, right? What are the different variable types? Boolean, I can set Booleans, true, false, right? Number values, you want to increment, decrement, I can use the add function. So I can add 1 or subtract 1 by using add and -1. So anything that you can do with variables is all possible using this technique. And the beauty of this technique is that we do not have to use multiple variables. A single variable suffices for all the variables that we want to create as part of our flow. And that's how we can save our crucial and valuable API calls.
It's a nice one, man. It's a really nice one. It's I've never really even thought about it like that. I'm guilty, right? A lot of my flows have a bunch of variables at the top. I never thought to really just make it an array and then just pick what I need out of it.
Exactly.
It's beautiful. It's really nice.
Thank you. And now moving ahead to part number 3. Now, part number 3, the final part for today, is around error handling. Okay, error handling in flows. And this is one of the most common use cases that every flow maker needs to be aware of is error handling, because in flow, by design or by default, there is no feature of error handling. All flow does is sends you a notification that your flows have failed and your flows have failed X number of times in the last 24 hours. Now for this, I will create the flow from scratch just to show you what are the different steps here in which I'm performing my error handling. So I'm going to create a very simple flow that triggers manually. And of course, I will start with initializing a variable. I'm going to call this variable, once again, the same case as before, my variable profile. And I will make this an object. I am going to copy my value and paste it right here. So I have basically initialized my variable right here of type profile. Now, the key thing to understand here is that how do I go about performing error handling in case I take certain actions that could potentially result in an error? Reza, why would flow throw an error? Many reasons, right? When the flow is running, maybe you're performing some action that is just not valid. You're trying to divide by 0. Maybe you're trying to connect to a data source that is currently not available. Maybe you're trying to read data from a specific table, from a specific column, and someone just deleted the column. It's all possible. There are many scenarios wherein a flow could potentially fail. Now, in this case, I've just created my variable. And the next step is I'm going to add a very simple compose action right here, a very simple compose action. And as part of this compose action, I'm going to plug in an expression. And this expression ties into the previous example that I provided. I'm trying to set this time the expertise, which is an array variable, right? Right here, expertise is an array. And John has apps, automate, and Power BI as his expertise. In this case, I would like to add one additional expertise. Maybe I'll give Power Virtual Agents as well. Okay?
I'm better at PVA than I am at apps, in all fairness.
All right, so you get in this case, while I'm performing this, I have purposefully made a mistake, right? So when I was creating this variable that I'm trying to create right here, or I'm trying to refer right here, there is a variable called var profile, but within this, I'm trying to read a node, which is v expertise. And guess what? If you look at my object, it's called expertise. It's not called v expertise, right? So I made a mistake. It's possible, right? I'm building a flow. I might write certain expressions. It could result in an error. many other use cases. So I'm making a mistake here. Now, if I go ahead and save this flow, and if I go ahead and run this flow, all right, flow is saving. Let's go ahead and run this flow. Okay, the flow runs, and guess what? The flow fails because I'm trying to refer something that is null. Very common error message when we try and perform certain actions on values that are null. Now, how do I go about handling this error? And guess what? A flow can have multiple actions, right? I can even have another action after this that says, you know what, I want to set the variable as well. Maybe that variable at the start that I created, I want to go ahead and set that variable. Maybe I want to send an email. I want to do so many more things as part of my flow. Now, how do I handle my errors? Because the flow is just going to throw an error, not tell me what the error is, where the error has occurred, in which action. How do I grab all that information? Well, here's the trick. In flows, you can handle a group of actions together and do error handling together. And the way you can do that is one of the actions in flow is called scope. Many people use scopes for grouping actions and cleaning their flows, basically making their flows look smaller or better. But scope has a lot of other use cases. Here's one. If I group the actions together, and let's say I rename this to like a try block, classic .NET kind or classic experience of development, try, catch, finally. And after this, I will create another scope. And in this, I'm going to make this my catch block. Okay. And this is where I'm going to catch exceptions. Any exception that occurs where? That occurs in the try block. And for that, I will go here for this action, my catch block, go to configure run after, and specify that I would like this catch block to run only when anything in the try block has failed. Okay, that's the beauty of using scopes. Anything in there fails, it will catch it. Okay, and once I click done, now I get this little red arrow right here indicating that this section or this block gets called only when anything in this block fails. Right? And right here, I can go ahead, and this is what I see people performing error handling, try, catch, they send a notification email. But that's not what I want. Yes, I want a notification email, but I want the actual error message. How do I grab that? How do I get the actual error, the text, which action in that try block failed? So once again, expressions to the rescue. If I head over to the function right here, there is something known as result. Okay, result. There's a function called result. And as part of this function, if you go ahead and just pass the name of that scope. So in my case, my scope was called, I believe, try. This is case sensitive. So result of try. That's all I'm doing right now. Okay. Let me go ahead and run this and see what happens in the flow. Remember, we are still building the flow. We are not complete with this flow. So I'm going ahead and running this flow. And as you can see, the action failed. But this time I had a catch block that's going to handle that error. So it's handling it. But I just don't want to send a notification email. I want to do a lot more. Now, as part of this try, this compose action, I used the expression called result. And in result, I just gave the name of my block, which was try. Now let's look at what this result gives us. It's very important to understand what it provides. Of course, it provides JSON, but not just JSON. The try block has a lot of actions in it, right? I had a compose action and a set variable action. Imagine your scenario, you have 20, 50 actions in there. It will return me each of the actions. So here's my compose action. It will tell me the status of each of those actions. In this case, the compose action failed. It failed, right? Why did it fail? Here's the error message. This is what I want, right? This is what I want the maker of the flow or the user of the flow to understand, that when this flow ran, this was the error. So I can grab the exact position, I can grab the exact code, and also grab the exact message that flow displays in the flow run only. And that is right here. And for the preceding actions, for example, set variable, so you can see that action was skipped. And why was that action skipped? Because my flow resulted in an error right here. When I get an error, the flow just stops processing further. But because I handled it, it's processing further. And then this magic expression called result gets me everything that I need.
I didn't know about result either. This is a masterclass in unknown template language things today. This is awesome.
Thank you. And now to show you my complete flow, because I want to save time here. Here is my flow, which has the entire error handling piece. And I'll show you how I'm using result here as well. It's the same concept, basically. Here's my flow, triggers manually. I have my try block. I have that same error that I'm producing here, and I have an extra action. And here's my catch block. Now comes the magic. Right here, I'm using that same result expression, nothing special here, result of the name of my block. Now, next step, if you notice the JSON, it returns an array. But I am only interested in the actions that have failed. So for that, I have to filter the array. And filter on what? Filter on the status equal to failed. So how do I go about doing that? For that, all I did is this. I used the data operation called filter array. And for this, I provided that same result expression, which gives me the array. And in there, I'm checking to see if the status, and this is also an expression, item question mark status. We showed this in chapter 3. It's that same expression right here. I'm grabbing the status and getting the statuses where it is equal to failed, because that's what I'm interested in. Next, I select, again, this is a data operation. From this array, I just select the error code and the error message. I am not interested in all the other data that is provided right here. I just want the code and the message. So for that, I have used the select data operation. And then I'm just using the create HTML table action, passing this operation here and sending myself an email. And in this, I'm also having that same function I showed you in the first scenario, which is the link to my flow run, because the user can directly go to the flow run. So this is an amalgamation of everything that I just showed you throughout the session. So let's go ahead and run the flow.
You make it look so easy, man. It's crazy. When I watch you, I'm like, this is so easy. And then I go try and do it. And I'm like, this is not as easy as he makes it look.
I can share all the samples. And guess what? Because these flows that I'm creating have no connectors, I'm not connecting to any data source. I'll share all the flows as well, so you can see it live.
Nice, nice.
That was one reason why I didn't use the connectors. Okay, so, so here's the flow. The flow ran. Error handling has happened. Great. And of course, if I go to the flow runs, this is all I see, right? I see success because I've handled the error.
Yep.
But here is the email that I received. And check this email out. I'm going to try and zoom in.
Nice.
Right? This is a nicely formatted email. It tells me that there was an error in my flow run. And I can have all the details here, which item the flow was running on, or which document, or which record, whatever your use case is, right? This is the error code. And this is the exact error message that flow throws right here. And to tie all of this up together, why should the user even go and search for the flow run? Here's a link with a little bit of a smart emoji right here to take me directly to the flow run. So if I select this, guess where it's going to take me? Directly to that flow run experience. Direct.
Right. Wish I could drop my microphone. My goodness.
Oh. Yeah. That's it. You see how simple it can. You can simplify things by knowing expressions. And what were the expressions we used? Workflow to give me the run details. Result to give me the result of a block. So I can scan through the JSON. And that's why expression, language understanding is so important, because to parse through these things, yes, I can use parse JSON, but why? Why do I add additional actions? Why not save API calls? Why not reduce variables? Why not use JSON? And that
it's so much easier and cleaner too, right? Than having to try and parse on spaces or parse on certain words. And right, this just sets everything up in such a nice manner. It makes it all selectable. And I like how you use select and send an HTML table. That's just such a nice little, like, what is it? A feather in the cap, or it's nice, such a nice added touch.
So here's the follow-up question from the audience. How did you format that HTML table? Well, I'll share the entire flow so you can grab all the information.
Awesome. You know what, Reza? You know what you should do? Big idea here. You should make a blog post maybe that has all these expressions in it. And then I could link that in the description. So they have one handy place to go, links over to your property so they can see all your wonderful stuff once they're done checking this out.
Yeah. Let's get them over to my house. Get them to my property. Yeah, let's do that.
Absolutely. So you guys, at home, here's what you do. You go down and you check the description. There's going to be some links for Reza there. There's going to be a link to a post that'll show you all of what he showed today. These expressions, so you can use them, a download to the flows. But more than that, go ahead and get connected with him. Follow him on Twitter. Go ahead and subscribe to him here on YouTube. He's on my channel today, but he does stuff like this all the time on his own channel, so it's definitely worth going and getting subscribed over there, because as you can see, he's a genius. He's showing me stuff that I've never even heard of before. So definitely something you want to do. Reza, man, thanks so much for coming and hanging out. Like, really appreciate you coming here every time and giving us a master class.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to come here and present this stuff. And if the people speak and they say we want another expression series, we'll come with more.
I like that. Okay, so you heard the man. Demand more. All right. Okay, you guys go ahead and click like, click subscribe so that you don't miss another video. Go in the description, get connected with Reza. But for now, that is it from us. We will see you in the next one. Much love. Take care. Later.